Welcome back to the English Learning Podcast. I'm Emily, and alongside me today is John. Today we're diving into a topic crucial for English learners: how to think and speak in English both fluently and naturally. It's about transforming your cognitive process, not just memorizing grammar rules. Hi, John.
Hi, Emily. Hi, everyone. We're tackling how you can internalize English to the point where it becomes second nature. It's one thing to know a language, but another to live it, to think and react in it spontaneously. Today's episode is packed with strategies and insights on how to achieve this fluency.
And we won't stop there. Later, we'll introduce some pivotal phrases in our vocabulary segment to kickstart your cognitive shift to English. Plus, we'll discuss how to effectively buy time in conversations when you need a moment to gather your thoughts. If you've ever found yourself mentally translating from your mother tongue to English before speaking, this episode is for you. Let's start at the beginning. Thinking in a new language is a challenge because it's not just about knowing vocabulary or grammar. It's about changing the way your brain processes information. John, why do you think many learners struggle with this?
Well, Emily, a lot of it has to do with the comfort and familiarity of one's native language. Your first language is your default thinking tool. You've been using it to understand and interact with the world since you were a baby. Switching that default setting to a new language requires not only a strong command of the language, but also a significant shift in mental habits.
That's right. Our brains have built up years, sometimes decades, of neural pathways that rely on our native language. When you switch to English, you're essentially reprogramming those pathways. Imagine trying to change your route to work every day after driving the same way for years. It's tough, but not impossible.
Exactly. And that's why it can feel so daunting at first. But the good news is your brain is capable of rewiring itself. With consistent practice and the right strategies, you can start thinking in English without even realizing it.
It's all about rewiring your brain, as John said. And one crucial point here is to be patient. You're not just learning vocabulary. You're teaching your brain a new way of thinking. Let's dive into some of those strategies that can make this transition easier and more effective.
Exactly. The first key strategy we're going to discuss is immersion. Total immersion is a robust technique where you surround yourself with the English language in every possible way. But Emily, how can our listeners practically immerse themselves in English?
Immersion can be as simple or as in-depth as you want it to be. You can start by setting small goals. For instance, switch the language settings on your phone, computer, and social media to English. These small changes make English part of your daily life without feeling overwhelming.
I agree. And beyond that, you can try labeling items in your home in English, put sticky notes on your refrigerator, your mirror, and your bookshelves so that every time you look at something you associate it with its English name. It sounds simple, but it builds constant exposure.
And don't stop there. Make English media your go-to. Dedicate specific hours of your day to only consuming English content. Whether it's listening to English podcasts, watching movies, or reading books. The more your brain is exposed to the language, the more it starts associating English with your daily thoughts.
That's right. Another technique I personally love is narrative practice. This involves narrating your day-to-day activities in English. For example, when you wake up and brush your teeth, say to yourself, "I'm brushing my teeth," or "I'm preparing my breakfast." This starts to create a natural flow of thoughts in English, even in simple contexts.
And as you progress, challenge yourself. Instead of sticking to simple activities, narrate your thoughts on more complex topics. Talk to yourself in English about your goals for the day, or reflect on something you've recently learned. The key here is practice. The more you narrate your thoughts, the easier it becomes to think in English without translating.
Yes, and a similar but highly effective technique is learning to paraphrase. When you don't understand something or want to clarify, try paraphrasing it back to the speaker in English. For example, if someone says, "I'm heading to the store to buy groceries," you can respond, "So you're going to the store to get some food." This not only reinforces your understanding, but gets you used to thinking quickly in English.
Thinking in English is one thing, but speaking effectively is another. John, what tips can you share for improving spoken English, especially when fluency isn't quite there yet?
One effective method is regular conversation practice. It doesn't matter if it's with native speakers or fellow learners. The key is consistency. Joining English-speaking groups or online language exchange communities can provide you with regular practice, which is essential for fluency.
Exactly. And don't forget the power of technology. Using apps like language learning platforms or even voice recording apps to track your progress can be incredibly helpful. Record yourself speaking and then listen back to identify areas for improvement.
Absolutely. Another great strategy for improving fluency is to practice buying time in conversations. If you're caught off guard or need a moment to gather your thoughts, use phrases like, "That's a great question. Let me think about that." Or, "Let me see how I can explain this." These phrases are perfect for giving yourself that extra moment to think while still staying engaged.
And when you're speaking, don't be afraid to use fillers. Words like well, or can give you the pause you need to organize your thoughts without awkward silence. Just be mindful not to overuse them, as they can also detract from your message if used too frequently.
That's a great point. Another tip is to master questioning techniques. Asking for clarification, like saying, "Could you elaborate on that?" Or, "Can you explain that a bit more?" gives you time to think while encouraging a deeper conversation.
Speaking of deep conversations, another overlooked skill is active listening. When you truly focus on understanding the speaker, you can respond more appropriately, which leads to more fluent conversations. It's not just about waiting for your turn to speak, but actively engaging with the content of what's being said.
Exactly. And don't forget to record and review your conversations. Listening back helps you catch things you might have missed in the moment and gives you an opportunity to reflect on how to improve next time.
One area that often gets overlooked is practicing English in varied situations. You can expand your ability to think in English by exposing yourself to different contexts. For example, try practicing English while doing different activities, like explaining a recipe in English while you cook, or describing what you see during a walk. This will help your brain get used to switching between everyday scenarios.
Yes, I love that idea. And don't be afraid to take risks. Join a local club like a debate or book club where you can push yourself to think critically in English. It's not only about speaking, it's also about forming opinions and expressing them clearly. When you're in these contexts, you're forced to process English faster and more effectively.
Exactly. Another thing that works well is combining English practice with your hobbies. If you love music, try translating lyrics from your native language into English. Or, if you're into sports, watch live commentary and mimic the announcers. These creative strategies let you think in English without it feeling like hard work.
Yes, and here's another idea. Challenge yourself to read a news article or watch a documentary in English and then explain it to someone else in English. This practice not only helps improve your vocabulary, but also trains your brain to process more complex ideas in English.
Great timing for our vocabulary segment. Today we're focusing on phrases that can help you think in English and manage conversations more effectively. Let's start with, let's break it down. This is a phrase you can use when you're trying to explain something complex in a simpler way.
It's a useful one. Another good one is, on the other hand, which is great for discussing two sides of an issue. It's commonly used in debates and structured discussions to show balance.
Excellent. Another phrase I like is, what's your take on this? It's a fantastic way to invite others to share their opinions, making conversations more interactive and engaging.
If you're sharing what you know or your personal experience, the phrase, "as far as I know," works perfectly. For example, "As far as I know, the meeting starts at 10 a.m." It's a great way to express what you believe is true.
And for summarizing or concluding thoughts at the end of the day is useful. For instance, at the end of the day, it's about making progress, not perfection. It adds a sense of closure to your point.
And for those moments when you need time, that's an interesting point, buys you a moment to gather your thoughts. You can also ask, "Could you elaborate on that?" to give yourself more time while the other person expands on their point.
Another handy one is to put it another way, which is useful when you want to rephrase or clarify your thoughts. It shows you're actively thinking about how best to communicate.
And don't forget, "bear with me." This phrase is perfect when you need to pause for a moment to organize your thoughts without stalling the conversation.
Now let's focus on 5 essential tips for effective communication in English. Learn to paraphrase. Example: if you didn't understand something, paraphrase it back to the speaker to confirm your understanding.
Use fillers strategically. Example, incorporate fillers like well, or you know to buy time while organizing your thoughts.
Master questioning techniques. Example, ask clarifying questions such as, could you elaborate on that, to give yourself more time to think.
Practice active listening. Example, focus on really understanding the speaker, which will help you respond more appropriately.
Record and review conversations. Example, record your English conversations and listen back to identify areas for improvement.
Engaging in regular conversations with native speakers, language exchange groups, or even fellow learners will improve your confidence and fluency. Additionally, technology can be a great aid. Using apps or platforms to practice pronunciation or get feedback can significantly refine your speaking skills.
Exactly, John. Another practical strategy is to keep a phrase book, whether it's digital or physical, where you can note down useful phrases. Over time, these phrases will become part of your active vocabulary, making it easier to retrieve them when you're thinking or speaking.
And as you integrate these practices into your life, you'll find that you're not just reacting in conversations, but actively contributing, which is a huge confidence booster.
To continue building on what we've learned today, I'd encourage our listeners to engage in activities that challenge their English in new contexts. Whether it's volunteering, joining debate clubs, or even trying to explain your favorite movie plot in English, each interaction is an opportunity to refine your thinking and speaking abilities.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes. Every mistake you make is an opportunity to learn. They are stepping stones towards greater fluency. Remember, the goal is continuous improvement, not perfection.
Exactly, John. As you immerse yourself in varied English-speaking environments, you'll notice that thinking in English will become a natural part of your thought process.
As we wrap up today's episode, remember that the journey to thinking and speaking in English is unique for everyone. The key is finding what works best for you, incorporating English into your daily life, and using it in ways that feel natural and enjoyable.
Whether it's through music, films, books, or conversations, every interaction is a chance to practice and improve. With the strategies we've discussed today, you're on your way to making English a vibrant part of your everyday life. Thank you for joining us on the English Learning Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it with friends, and leave us a review. We love hearing from you, and your feedback helps us keep improving.
Keep pushing your boundaries and keep thinking in English. Until next time, take care and keep practicing.